Einstein.
Calm down, Marty. I didn't disintegrate anything. The molecular structure of both Einstein and the car are completely intact.
Where the hell are they?
They've gone back to basics.
Am I okay there? Yeah. I fiddle with this sometimes, and sometimes it goes off. Well, it's great to see you all here. My name's Simon. I'm the lead minister here. And if you're here for the first time, you're really welcome, and do stay around so we can get to know you more. Well, if you've never been here before, you might know I don't come from around this way. Where do I come from? Southend? Oh, I didn't know you knew that. Yeah. I used to live in Derbyshire, actually, before I was here. And up there, when you go anywhere, they say, "You don't sound like you come round this way." No, we never say that down in Southend. But I was back down in Southend. I was sorting out my dad's house before he came out of hospital. But I got a bit of time out, and it was beautiful weather, so I went along this place. You know where that is? Southend Seafront. Well, in my dreams. That's kind of what I imagine. So actually, I think that's Miami, but... And I love walking along there because it brings back loads of memories. I had such a kind of happy childhood. We lived round the corner to the seafront, lovely park opposite us, and the family got involved in going out on boats and stuff. Couldn't be more far away from the sea here, but it was great. And my uncle, he used to have a boat. He was mad on boats. There's a kind of picture of him. And I remember the time when I was walking down the front, I saw my uncle's boat. It was moored out to sea, just a little way out, but far enough. And I decided to go and swim out there. So I set off, really confident. That's me. When I was a teenager, I was a good-looking boy, in those days. And I did have hair that probably longer than that, actually. I decided, strong, confident, I was a good swimmer. I was going to go out and impress my uncle and auntie and see them on the boat. So I waved and said, "Hi, Uncle Ian." I swam out, and actually, as I got further out, I was going, "Hi, Uncle Ian." And I was kind of struggling, but I just kept telling myself, I'm fine. And then actually, when I got to the boat, I said, "Can you help me up on the boat, please?" And I just about managed it on the boat. And if they'd have been a little bit further out, I think I probably would have been in trouble. And then when I got on the boat, I sat down. I was pretty dizzy. They gave me something to eat and a bit of water and put a towel around me. And my auntie Jenny, she gave me a bit of a telling off, and she said, "Simon, you should have asked for help sooner." I hope they don't watch the live stream because they don't look anything like this. It's just kind of my imagination of what they look like. But have you had a moment like that? You think you're fine. You keep on pushing forward, but deep down something feels off. We all do that sometimes, don't we? Particularly, actually, when it comes to our relationship with God. And you might not be a Jesus follower and think, well, I don't have any relationship with God. I'm okay in life. But everyone has some kind of relationship with God. We either know God in a real way as Jesus followers, or actually we're far from God. But one way or another, we all relate to God because He's the one who made us. We think we're good. We think we're fine, but actually we're in more trouble than we know. And we become aware of that when we get near to Jesus. So we're in week 3 of our series, Back to Basics. And we've been stripping down faith to what really matters, cutting through the noise and looking at the arc of God's story, the narrative of faith as we've called it, and finding out how we can be part of it. So in week 1, we asked faith, what's the point of it? And we busted the myth that faith was just about rules and regulations or about blind belief and taking a leap of faith. Faith is about trusting what God has done in Jesus. As faith is saying yes to God and being part of His story. And faith syncs us with God's story. It brings us in line. It brings our life in line with God and with His purposes. It involves us saying yes to Him and stepping into what He's already doing. And then in week 2, we thought about where it all went wrong. And we talked about why the world and our lives feel broken. And we had a bit of a Titanic theme there. We thought about the film Titanic and the story of the Titanic. But actually we went back to the original disaster story, the story of how things started going wrong in the first place, because people, God's first creation, Adam and Eve, said to God, "No, get out of my life. I'm going to do it my way. And everything went wrong from then on. And the Bible calls that sin. And basically it's saying, God, I'm not going to go your way. Get out of my life. I'm going to do it my way. And we're separated from God and everything goes wrong. And that's the root of all the difficulties in the world. It's like a ship hitting an iceberg and everything going off course. But the good news is that God didn't leave us drowning. He sent a rescuer. And so we need to stop sinking and seize the solution. And that is, again, faith. It's saying yes to Jesus. Yes, I believe what you've done. I trust in you. And I'm going to follow you and be part of your story. So that brings us to week 3. I'm fine, right? Why Jesus says otherwise. Now, we know the world's messed up. I was talking to someone. I was at a civic event the other day, and this really nice gentleman was talking to me, and he said to me, he said, between me and you, Simon, the world's in a terrible state. I love the way he said that, because I thought, oh yeah, everyone's aware of that. I think the world is in a terrible state. We all know that. But actually, when we think of ourselves, we think, well, I'm okay. You know, the world's all at odds, but I'm all right. It's a bit like the time I swam out to my uncle's boat off the south end shore. First, I was confident. When I got further out, I struggled, but I kept telling myself I'm fine. But looking back, I realized that I wasn't. And some of you might be feeling the same now. You might be feeling, yeah, I'm okay, I'm fine, I can muddle on. But I want to invite you to do something today. And if you're not a Jesus follower, especially I want to invite you to do this. I want to invite you to step near to Jesus, to be clear about where you are. And if you are a Jesus follower, I don't want you to sit there thinking, well, that's okay, I've done that, I follow Jesus, because sometimes, we can all drift away from Jesus, and we all need to get closer to him, because he's the rescuer. That purpose of God is found only in him. So we're going to think about this as we look at the story of the man who was at the center of that reading that Rita gave to us early on, Zacchaeus. One moment in Jesus' presence made him realize his need, and realized that he needed rescuing by Jesus, and it flipped his world upside down. But it's interesting, you've got two sets of people. You've got the despised Zacchaeus there, who climbed a tree to try and find Jesus, but you've got a crowd of people looking on and saying, why is Jesus wasting his time with him? And actually, in their hearts, they were obviously thinking, we're the ones who are all right, and Jesus wants to spend time with us, and Zacchaeus, he's beyond redemption. He's past being saved. But actually, he was the one who drew near to Jesus and saw his real need. And we need to make sure we're on the right side of that story. All of us, whether we're Jesus followers or not. So let's dive in. Let's head to Jericho, a city buzzing with life. It's wealthy, it's important, it's full of movement. It's a place of trade and power where deals are struck and fortunes are made, where power is brokered. And right in the middle of that, we meet this guy called Zacchaeus. He is rich. He is powerful. He's got everything that life could give him except popularity. In fact, the reverse. He's completely hated. And we're told that he's a tax collector. Not any old tax collector either. The chief tax collector. Meaning that he's made a fortune from taking extra money from his own people. Now, if you don't know what was going on at this time, the Romans were ruling and to be more efficient, what they used to do was they used to bring in local people, bring in nationals. So they brought in Jewish people, Israeli people, and they said, look, if you become a tax collector, you can collect what we want, and you can take whatever else you want. So it was kind of a double whammy for the people who they were collecting tax from, because not only were they collecting taxes from a power that had invaded them, but they were robbing them as well. So you can understand why he was so hated. They see him as a traitor, and they think he's beyond hope. You can see that in the reaction of the crowd. Why does Jesus want to waste his time with him, they say. But here's the twist. Zacchaeus, this hated man, this man who's rich and powerful, albeit at a cost, wants to get close to Jesus. He wants to step near to be clear. So we're told that Zacchaeus wanted to see who Jesus was, but he was too short to see over the crowd. You know what it's like when you're at a gig or something and you've got someone tall in front of you. You know, one of life's mysteries, you know, the two life's mysteries. Why do ladies always go to the toilet in twos? That's the biggest mystery, yeah. And then the second mystery is, why do tall people always stand at the front? Why? You know, and then us people who are shorter can never see. So I kind of really feel for Zacchaeus, because I'm not the tallest person in the world, and he wanted to get close to Jesus. And we're not told about his motives. Maybe he just wanted to see what the person looked like. But you can see there's more to it just by the way that the story unfolds, by the way that his life completely changes. He wants to know what this is all about, to who this Jesus guy is. He has money, he has power, he's incredibly unpopular, and no one lets him through. So what does he do? Well, many of us know the story well. He runs ahead and he climbs a tree. That's an amazing thing to do. I mean, rich and powerful people don't climb trees. Children do. Desperate people do. You know, if you were in the jungle and a lion came, you would probably kind of climb a tree to get away from it. Or if you were little and you just wanted to play, you'd climb a tree for the fun of it. But as an adult, it's just not something we do, is it? But Zacchaeus doesn't care. He's willing to look ridiculous if it gets him closer to Jesus. And then it happens. Jesus came to that place. So obviously, you know, he saw Jesus like for a little way off, over the heads of the crowd, and Jesus spotted him. And he walked over to where he was. Amazing. He came to where he was, this despised person. And he says, hurry up, come down. I must stay in your house today. That is quite a radical thing to do. Because in that culture, if you had a meal with someone who was despised and ostracized, you were identifying yourself with them. And he was saying, actually, you know, people, he's saying this publicly, I'm identifying with this man you hate. I'm going to welcome him. I'm going to be with him. I'm going to show you how he can be part of my story. So Jesus stops, he looks up, he calls him by name, and everyone watching, they're fuming. All the people saw this. They began to complain. Jesus is staying with a sinner. And that word sinner was really loaded because it was used by the religious leaders to talk about the people who they thought were the dregs of society. You know, the tax collectors, the prostitutes, the thieves, the murderers, the people who they thought were way beyond the pale. Jesus didn't come for those kind of people, did he? He came for good people like us, just to kind of help us get along in life a bit more. And they don't get it. Why him, they say. Why would Jesus choose a guy who deserves it the least? Why doesn't he come round to my house for tea? But Zacchaeus, he gets it. Because in that moment, Jesus already accepts him. He didn't need to prove himself. He didn't need to do anything to get into Jesus' favor. He needed to just get near, to be clear as to where he was with Jesus so that his life was turned around. And you see, everything shifts. Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, and as far as we know, this is actually before they even had tea together. Just being in the presence of Jesus did this. He said, I will give half my money to the poor, and if I've cheated anyone, I will pay them back 4 times more. Now that is amazing. I mean, often I find there's nothing more rich than someone who's got a lot of money because they want to kind of keep hold of it. You know, we knew this guy was in a church I used to be at, and he used to be involved in. I think he started the church I used to be at, and he was as tight as a drum. You know, he was as tight as a drum, but he was like as rich as you could think. He used to kind of drive up in, I don't know, it was a Daimler or something he drove up in. He was so tight. And I said, I can't believe that guy's so rich yet so tight. And they said, that's probably why he's so rich. He never lets go of any of it. And actually, it's a hard thing. The more you get, the harder it is to let go of it. But you see, Zacchaeus, suddenly everything fell into perspective. And he said, you know, this doesn't matter anymore. All this money, all this power, I'm just going to give it away because I want my life to be redefined around Jesus. I want it to serve your purposes. I want it to change. And I want to make sure no one feels cheated by me anymore. Jesus, you've changed my life around. He's saying that. That's amazing. He didn't have to prove himself. Here's the kicker. Jesus didn't call Zacchaeus out or shame him like those people would have done. There was no lecture, no put down, no demands. Just getting close to Jesus was enough to show Zacchaeus that he needed help. And it changed everything. And instantly, Zacchaeus' life flips around. But the crowd, the grumbling, They're mumbling, they're complaining. And Jesus drops a truth bomb on them to make his point clear. And we need to go through this bit by bit. Jesus said, salvation has come to this house today. Now, what does that word mean? Well, salvation is about being rescued, restored, and made whole. Not once, but always. And actually, when you look at it in the New Testament, salvation is past, present, and future. You know, those of us who are Jesus followers, we can look back at a day we said yes to Jesus. You know, I can look back to that day and actually, I know I must have been about 3 at the time, but it's almost 50 years ago I first said yes to Jesus. I remember it clearly, and I remember saying, yes, Jesus, I want to follow you, I trust in you completely, and that was it. I look back, that was the day I was rescued. That was the day I was saved. But it's also present. It's in the past tense, but it's the present because God is helping me live out my salvation. That process is continuing as I become more like Jesus, as I follow him more closely. But it's also something in the future because I'm going to be part of that new creation that God has. I'm going to see him face to face in heaven, and he's going to say, welcome. You're not guilty of any sin because I've dealt with it. Welcome into my presence and be part of that future. I'm part of God's story. That's what salvation is. And Jesus said, salvation's come to this house. Now, we're not told the details, but I can imagine actually he's saying that kind of, and I might just be like way off beam here, but I can imagine Jesus kind of walking over to where Zacchaeus lived. Maybe he lived quite near and saying, you know, this house here, salvation's come here, not because of the house, but because of this guy, because this guy wanted to get close to me. This guy wanted to trust in me. Then he says something that would really have shocked them. This man truly belongs to the family of Abraham. Now remember, all the people around him would have been Jewish. They would have been descendants of Abraham. We thought about Abraham the first week. He was the first man to trust in God. And God said, I'm going to make a great nation from you. And they're part of that nation. And he's saying, do you know what? This man is really like Father Abraham, who trusted God. This man is more like him than you. Why? Because he trusted. Because he had faith. And then he goes on to say exactly what had been going on here. The Son of Man, that's a name that Jesus chose for himself, and actually it's a name that he took from the Old Testament. The Son of Man came to find lost people and to save them. The sad thing is that most of those people listening to Jesus wouldn't have realized that. Because all they could do was think how disgusting it was that Jesus would go into the house of a tax collector, of someone who cheated and robbed them, who was beyond the pale. And they didn't realize, actually, they needed to get close to Jesus. They were far from God. Their lives needed turning round. And here's a fact that we've all got to face up to. You are more lost than you realized. Are you one of those people, you know, when you can't find your way, you'd never admit to it? Before the days of sat-navs, I was driving around California. Believe it or not, can you imagine me driving around California with a friend? We were at a conference, and we decided to go to Universal Studio for a day, and we just had these scant directions that we tried to follow. We went in this seedy neighborhood. It was like, you know, I mean, it really did look, I'm not being snobby, but, you know, it's America, and, you know, the seedy neighborhoods mean guns and gangs and stuff, you know, and I was getting really nervous, and I said, I think we're lost. No, we're all right, my friend said, we're all right. And then, anyway, we found our way out, and we still had no idea where we were, but we had a mobile phone with us, and I said, let's ring up our host. No, we can't do that. Well, they're going to think we're really stupid. And I think, you know, I would rather them think we're stupid and get back safely than be wandering around California for the next 2 weeks. And anyway, in the end, he relented, and I rang them up, and they said, yes, you're on the wrong highway. And what they did was they stayed on the phone with him and kind of gave us directions, and as you can see, I did find my way back. I'm back here now, and I did get the right flight back. But the fact was, my friend just wouldn't face up to the fact we were lost. You know what? And I told him this straight. I said, it was his pride. I said, that's pride. You know, come on, you've got to humble yourself and realize. And anyway, it's me that's got to humble myself. I've got us lost. Anyway, mind you, he was a lousy navigator. I mean, he should have known better, didn't he, to traveling with me. You're more lost than you realize. Do you know that? You're more lost than you would know. But you're more loved than you imagine. And we've got to face up to that first part, that we're lost, that without God. But he loves us more than we could ever imagine by sending his son to die for us on the cross and take our sin upon himself and give us new life. Jesus didn't come to call us out. He came to pull us out, to put us back together, to reconnect us with God, to break every chain holding us down and to invite us into a way of life the way it's meant to be lived. Zacchaeus' story proves this. And the big question is, are we going to be like Zacchaeus? Are we going to say, yeah, I just want to get close to Jesus, step close, to be clear and know where I am? Or are we going to be like those other people who just look down on everyone else? When I was at a technical college in Thurrock, in Grays, I remember we had a mission. We had a week of activities to tell people about Jesus that Christian Union had organised. We wanted to put posters all over. And I wanted to put them in the canteen, and someone said, you better talk to the manager of the canteen. And she was absolutely terrifying. She used to, if you got on her right side, she used to be very generous. And she used to shout out. She used to see someone she liked, she'd go, double chips, Hild! And someone would get double chips, but if you're on the wrong side, you know, you'd get ration. She was absolutely terrifying, but you had to get on the right side. And so I went really nervously and said, do you think we can put posters up? Now, this was like the 1970s, and there was like loads of, and it was a kind of a hotbed of like Socialist Workers' Party, all that kind of thing. There's loads of posters going up, but actually, what's this going to be? And I said, oh, it's about Jesus. You know, we've got a week of activities, and we want people to know more about Jesus. She went, oh, lovely. It's nice to see young men like you, nice to see young people interested in religion. Oh, yeah, that's lovely. And I said, would you like to come along? And that was it. Half rations for chips for me from then on. She looked at me. I'll never forget the way she was quite short, but she kind of pulled herself up. She was terrifying, absolutely. She said, no, save it for those sinners out there. You see it? And actually, that's what it's like, isn't it? You know, it's always those people out there, but we're more lost than we realise. We've got to face up to where we are. All of us are lost. Actually, the Bible says all of us have sinned. All of us have said, God, get out of my life in some way or another. But we're more loved than we can imagine because Jesus has come. Zacchaeus didn't know what would happen when he climbed that tree, but he just had to see Jesus. Maybe that's you. You're not all in, but something's pulling you closer. You know, that's enough. That's your first step. And how can you take the next step this week? How about this? How about, getting your phone, getting a Bible app on it, and reading Zacchaeus' story again? I can help you find where it is. It's Luke 19. And ask yourself, what's this saying about my life? And how about trying to pray? I know it might just feel weird, but just say, Jesus, if you're real, show me. Jesus, help me to understand this more. He'll hear you. And what about checking out Alpha? You know, we're starting a new Alpha course shortly. What about coming along to Alpha, a space where you can ask questions, wrestle with doubts, and explore faith? No pressure, no judgment. And keep showing up. Next week, the week after, and just see what happens. Now, as I said, this relates to all of us, not just those of us who don't follow Jesus. And if you follow Jesus, you might be close to him, but actually, when you get closer, you realize your needs and what he wants to put right in your life. Jesus rescued you when you came to him, and he keeps rescuing you as you grow. One day you'll see the full picture. You'll be part of his story. But sometimes we still carry things that belong to that old way of life. You're still carrying what he told you to drop. The guilt, the shame, the habit you keep going back to. You don't have to stay stuck. Just say this out loud. Jesus, help me stop carrying what you already took away. I want to live in that rescued life. I want to live in the life you called me to live. Maybe you feel like you've messed up and you've missed God's best. But hear this. God has no plan B for your life. You know, it's kind of like Google Maps. I love Google Maps, or Waze, or whatever you use. You know, I love it because when you go the wrong way and you hear that, first of all, you hear that sort of sickness sound. And it says, turn around where possible, or it will reroute you. You know, God's like that. He'll reroute you. Don't feel condemned. God sees you clearly, not just for who you are, or who you've even been, or who you are now, but for who you're going to become in him. So this week, put it behind you and make a fresh start. And if you're following Jesus and it's all going well, that's amazing. But how about looking out for someone who's struggling to see Jesus this week? Here's your move this week. Listen, actually hear someone's story. Invite them to coffee or to save a seat. We've got a great service coming up in a couple of weeks' time where we're making it especially designed to bring our friends along to. Invite them to Alpha. Open a door for them. Encourage them. Remind them that Jesus sees them and values them. And make it real. Talk to God about them. Pray for them daily. Be intentional. Reach out and stay connected. Take a risk. Love someone who's on the edges. In that same mission I was telling you about, I said, Lord, who do you want me to reach? And I remember I had this picture of this guy, and he was like the hardest, most difficult guy. And I was clear that God was saying, yeah, that guy. And I nervously went to him and chatted to him and said, well, we've got these events going, and what do you think? And he went, yeah, I'd like to come along. And he came along and he asked all sorts of questions. And I'm not sure what happened to him afterwards. Our ways kind of parted. But God clearly directed me to that guy. And I was probably kind of one step on his journey. There's probably someone else involved who led him to the Lord later on. And how about this? How about offering to pray for them? And they might say no, but often people say yes. And I don't mean you pray for them and say, I pray for this person that they would know eternal life in Jesus. But just pray about their situation and what's going on. And remember, God's rescue isn't just past tense. It's right here, right now. It's still unfolding. Live it, share it, keep moving forward. Zacchaeus was watching Jesus from a distance, but watching wasn't enough. He had to step near. And when he did, everything became clear. Still treading water as a Jesus follower? Step near. And Jesus will show you what needs recalibrating in your life. Not a Jesus follower? Take the next step. Still thinking you have to fix it all first? Stop. Jesus is already there. He's not asking you to swim harder. He's reaching out his hand. Step near. To be clear. And to live free. Take the next step. I'm going to pray. Oh, Lord, thank you that you came to seek and save lost people, people like us. And thank you that while we're more lost than we realized, we're more loved than we imagined. And Father, we pray that we would all draw close to you. And I pray for those who aren't Jesus followers, that they would take that next step to get close to you. Pray for those of us who are, that we would continue to take those steps, that we would follow you and be close to you and see our lives turned around. That continual transformation. In the name of Jesus. Amen.